Hi, in this video we will talk about what is logical fallacies all about. Before we start, let's get to know what is logical fallacies first to understand better. A logical fallacy is a flaw in reasoning, or a mistaken belief based on unsound arguments. They often arise from errors in logic or the misuse of evidence, leading to invalid or weak conclusions. Logical fallacies can appear in various forms, such as misleading statements, unfounded assumptions, or irrelevant distractions. Why is it important? It enables individuals to evaluate arguments critically and avoid being misled by flawed reasoning. This skill is essential for effective communication, decision-making, and the development of sound arguments. By identifying fallacies, one can dismantle weak arguments, clarify misunderstandings, and foster more rational and productive discussions. Types of logical fallacies. Ad hominem. Attacking the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. Straw man. Misrepresenting someone's argument to make it easier to attack. Appeal to authority. Asserting that a claim is true because an authority or expert on the issue said it is true, without presenting substantial evidence. False dilemma. Presenting two options as the only possibilities, when in fact more options exist. Slippery slope. Arguing that a relatively small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of related events. Now, let's move on to the example of logical fallacy. Ad hominem example. You can't trust John's opinion on climate change because he's not a scientist. But in real case, in political debates, candidates often use ad hominem attacks to discredit opponents rather than addressing their policies or arguments. This can mislead the public and shift focus away from substantive issues. Straw man example. Vegetarians say no one should eat meat, but humans have been eating meat for thousands of years. But in real case, in debates over environmental policies, opponents might create a straw man argument by suggesting that proponents want to ban all modern conveniences, which is rarely the case. This distorts the original argument and hinders constructive debate. Appeal to authority example. This medication must be effective because a famous doctor endorsed it. But in real case, in marketing, products are often endorsed by celebrities or experts. This can lead consumers to make decisions based on perceived authority rather than objective evidence, potentially resulting in poor choices. False dilemma example. We must either cut down all the trees in this forest or lose our jobs. But in real case, in public policy debates, such as those about national security versus privacy, presenting the issue as a strict dichotomy can oversimplify complex problems and limit the exploration of more balanced solutions. Slippery slope example. If we allow students to redo their assignments, soon they will expect to pass without any effort at all. But in real case, in discussions about drug legalization, opponents may argue that legalizing marijuana will inevitably lead to the legalization of all drugs, ignoring regulatory nuances and intermediate steps. This can stifle balanced discussion and policymaking. Consequences of committing logical fallacies. Misinformation. Spreading incorrect or misleading information, which can shape public opinion and policy decisions in detrimental ways. Poor decision-making. Making decisions based on flawed reasoning can lead to negative outcomes in personal, professional, and societal contexts. Erosion of trust. When logical fallacies are exposed, they can undermine trust in individuals, institutions, or movements, leading to skepticism and cynicism. Polarization. Fallacies like straw man and false dilemma can deepen divides by misrepresenting opposing viewpoints and reducing complex issues to black and white choices. Stifled progress. Constructive debate and problem solving are hindered when discussions are dominated by fallacious reasoning, preventing the exploration of viable solutions. By learning to recognize and address logical fallacies, individuals and communities can enhance their critical thinking skills, promote healthier discourse, and make more informed decisions. Just now we talked about logical fallacy. Next is fallacy of relevance. What is fallacy of relevance? A fallacy of relevance occurs when an argument's premises are not logically connected to the conclusion. Instead, these premises might appeal to emotions, distractions, or unrelated issues to persuade the audience, thereby diverting attention from the actual topic. Ad hominem. Appeal to emotion. Red herring. Introducing an irrelevant topic to divert attention from the original issue. Appeal to popularity. Arguing that something is true or right because it is popular. And straw man. Now we move on to fallacy of relevance examples. Appeal to emotion example. We must adopt this policy because it will make us feel safer, even if there's no evidence it will actually reduce crime. But in real case, after tragic events, such as terrorist attacks, policymakers sometimes push for strict security measures by invoking fear and sadness. For instance, the USA Patriot Act was passed shortly after the 9/11 attacks with strong emotional appeals to national security, despite concerns about civil liberties. This resulted in increased government surveillance and debates about the balance between security and privacy. Red herring example. Why should we worry about environmental policies when there are people who don't have enough to eat? But in real case, in debates about climate change, opponents sometimes bring up unrelated issues like economic instability or unrelated political scandals to distract from the discussion on environmental policy. This diversion can prevent meaningful progress on addressing climate change. Appeal to popularity example. Everyone is switching to electric cars, so it must be the best choice. But in real case, during the early 2000s, the popularity of low-carb diets, such as the Atkins diet, led many people to believe that these diets were the best way to lose weight and stay healthy. However, this trend overlooked the importance of balanced nutrition and long-term health consequences, demonstrating how popularity does not necessarily equate to scientific validity or overall healthiness. Consequences of committing fallacies of relevance. Distracted focus. The primary issue or argument gets sidelined, preventing effective problem-solving or discussion. Emotional manipulation. Decisions based on emotions rather than logic can lead to poor outcomes. Misinformation. Spreading false or misleading information can shape public opinion inaccurately. Erosion of trust. When fallacies are exposed, trust in the speaker or the argument can be undermined. Polarization. Misrepresenting arguments, straw man, or diverting attention, red herring, can deepen divisions and hinder productive dialogue. Now we proceed to the fallacy of insufficient evidence. What is fallacy of insufficient evidence? A fallacy of insufficient evidence occurs when an argument's conclusion is not adequately supported by the premises. This can happen when the evidence is weak, irrelevant, or misinterpreted. Types of fallacies of relevance. Hasty generalization. Drawing a general conclusion from a small or unrepresentative sample. Appeal to ignorance. Arguing that a lack of evidence proves something. False cause. Assuming that because one event followed another, it was caused by the first event. Slippery slope. Arguing that a small step will inevitably lead to a chain of related events. Weak analogy. Comparing two things that aren't really comparable in relevant aspects. Now we move on to the examples. Appeal to ignorance example. No one has ever proven that ghosts don't exist, so they must be real. But in real case, in legal contexts, an appeal to ignorance can have serious consequences. For example, arguing that a defendant must be guilty because there's no evidence to prove their innocence reverses the burden of proof. This fallacy undermines the principle of innocent until proven guilty, potentially leading to wrongful convictions. False cause example. Since we started using wind energy, the weather has been worse, so wind energy must be bad for the climate. But in real case, during the 1980s, some people claimed that an increase in crime rates was caused by the introduction of violent video games. This false cause argument ignored other factors like economic conditions, changes in law enforcement practices, and social issues that could contribute to crime rates. Policymakers who acted on this fallacy pushed for unnecessary regulations on video games, diverting attention from more effective crime prevention strategies. Slippery slope example. If we allow students to redo their assignments, soon they won't do any work on time. But in real case, in debates about legalizing same-sex marriage, some opponents argued that it would lead to a slippery slope where eventually polygamy and other forms of marriage would be legalized. This argument often ignored the legal, cultural, and ethical distinctions between different types of marriage, leading to fear-mongering and delaying the recognition of same-sex marriages. Eventually, same-sex marriage was legalized in many places without the predicted negative consequences. Weak analogy example. Employees are like nails. Just as nails must be hit on the head to work, employees must be pressured to perform. But in real case, in business, leaders sometimes use weak analogies to justify harsh management practices. For instance, comparing employees to machines that need regular maintenance might lead to treating workers as mere tools rather than human beings with rights and needs. This can result in poor morale, high turnover rates, and decreased productivity. Understanding and identifying logical fallacies is vital for several reasons. 1. Critical thinking. Recognizing logical fallacies helps individuals think critically, analyze arguments, and distinguish between valid and invalid reasoning. This skill is essential for making sound decisions based on evidence and logic. 2. Effective communication. By avoiding fallacies, individuals can present their arguments more clearly and persuasively. This leads to more productive discussions and helps in conveying ideas accurately. 3. Rational discourse. Identifying fallacies promotes rational discourse by focusing on the merit of arguments rather than being distracted by irrelevant or misleading information. This contributes to more meaningful and constructive conversations. And 4. Defense against manipulation. Understanding fallacies equips individuals to recognize and resist attempts to manipulate their opinions or emotions through flawed reasoning. This is particularly important in an age of misinformation and persuasive media. Understanding and identifying logical fallacies not only enhances individual decision-making but also contributes to more informed, rational, and productive societal discourse. By applying this knowledge in daily life, academic work, and professional settings, individuals can improve their reasoning, communication, and problem-solving skills, leading to better outcomes across various domains. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching.